Earth responded in silence. 20 minutes later, the stars burned HFY Sci-Fi stories. Before we begin exploring this tale of humanity's quiet strength, drop a like and subscribe. It might seem like a small gesture, but it really helps the algorithm share these stories with fellow sci-fi enthusiasts like yourself. I'd love to see who's part of our community. Captain Abigail Nightfell stood at the observation deck of the Nexus Prime diplomatic station, her elongated fingers tracing patterns across the reinforced transparent steel that separated her from the endless void beyond the stars, stretched out in familiar constellations she'd memorized during her 3 decades of service. But today they felt different, heavier weighted with an unspoken tension that had been building across the galaxy for months. Another delegation has withdrawn. Her aide, Kixor Felthane, announced his chitinous shell clicking as he approached across the polished floor. His compound eyes reflected the ambient lighting of the station as he handed her a crystal data pad that makes 7 this cycle. Abigail's 4-chambered heart pulsed slower than usual, a biological response her species, the Velthari, had evolved to manage stress. She examined the withdrawal notice from the Corvani Federation, their signature bioluminescent script glowing faintly against the dark surface. They cite scheduling conflicts, she murmured, though both knew it was a diplomatic fiction. Through the vast windows, the traffic patterns around Nexus Prime had shifted over the past month. Fewer vessels approached the massive wheel-shaped station that served as the galaxy's premier diplomatic hub. Cargo haulers maintained their schedules, but the sleek ambassadorial cruisers and ceremonial flagships had grown scarce. "Ma'am." Kixor's voice carried the tremor that always preceded difficult news, the human delegation. Abigail turned her silver eyes, catching the light. "They confirmed withdrawal as well?" "No, ma'am, they confirmed attendance." Silence settled between them like a blanket of snow on the ancient mountains of Velthar Prime. Abigail had expected this somehow, but hearing it aloud still sent a chill through her secondary nervous system. "How many others are still committed to attending?" she asked, already knowing the answer would disappoint her. Kixor consulted his internal databanks. His species, the Chithari, could access vast amounts of information through biological implants. Besides the humans, just the Zenthic Collective and ourselves. 3 delegations from a gathering that should have hosted 37, the Grand Assembly of Worlds, the most significant diplomatic event in galactic history, reduced to a handful of attendees, and all because of fear. Fear of the humans. Abigail moved away from the window and settled into her command chair, the ergonomically designed seat adjusting to accommodate her species' unique physiology. Status report on the Kepler incident investigation. Kixor's shell darkened a color change that indicated deep concern. The investigative commission released their preliminary findings this morning. 17-member World signed the document, but, he paused, none would release it publicly. Summarize the findings. The human colony of New Geneva on Kepler 442b was attacked by the Vorthak hegemony 6 months ago. Population 12.4 million civilians. The assault lasted approximately 4 hours before all communication ceased. Abigail already knew these facts, but hearing them again still triggered her species' instinctive protective responses. And the human response? That's where the report becomes, Kixor searched for the appropriate term, concerning. The aide projected a holographic display above them, showing the Kepler system as it appeared 6 months ago. A yellow star surrounded by 6 planets, the 4th world New Geneva, glowed with the soft blue indicator of a thriving colony. The Vorthak deployed a standard planetary subjugation fleet. Kixor continued. 237 vessels ranging from destroyer class to their flagship dreadnought Bone. Render measuring 4 kilometers in length, their strategy was textbook orbital bombardment, followed by ground assault and population processing. The hologram shifted, showing the arrival of the massive Vorthak fleet, dark angular ships that looked like they'd been carved from obsidian and hatred. Initial bombardment commenced at 0800 Galactic Standard Time. The display showed pinpricks of light striking the planet's surface. By 1200 hours, all human defensive installations had been neutralized. No return fire detected, no orbital platforms, no surface-to-space weapons, nothing. Abigail's crest feathers ruffled involuntarily. Continue. At 12:47 hours, the Vorthak began deployment of atmospheric processors designed to convert the oxygen-nitrogen mix to something more suitable for their physiology. Ground forces were mobilized for what they termed cleanup operations. The hologram zoomed in, showing the planet's surface scarred by bombardment cities, burning continents shrouded in smoke. At 13:01 hours, all Vorthak communications ceased simultaneously. Define simultaneously. Within the same nanosecond, ma'am, every ship, every ground unit, every orbital platform, 237 vessels with a combined crew of approximately 4 million Vorthak soldiers. Abigail felt her body temperature drop. Survivors? Zero confirmed, ma'am, but here's where it becomes truly unsettling. The hologram flickered and changed. At 13:02 hours, exactly 60 seconds after the communication blackout, every single Vorthak vessel began broadcasting the same message. What message? Kixor's shell pattern shifted to deep purple, a color associated with profound unease in his species. Translated from Vorthak military standard, the message read, "We are returning home, we will not return here. We are sorry." The two beings stared at the hologram in silence. The display showed the Vorthak fleet, now somehow intact and apparently functional, beginning to move away from Kepler 442b. Not in the chaotic, scattered retreat of a defeated force, but in perfect formation like a ceremonial parade. The entire fleet departed the system, maintaining that formation and that message. Kixor continued. They traveled for 6 days before jumping to hyperspace. Long-range sensors tracked them to the edge of Vorthak territory, where they remain to this day. And the investigation team's findings about what happened during that 1 minute? Kixor's shell went completely black. Quote, "There is no physical evidence of human military response, no energy weapons discharge, no kinetic projectiles, no electronic warfare signatures, no deployment of any technology recognizable to current galactic science," unquote. Abigail stood and began pacing, a habit she developed during her academy years. What about the human survivors? That's perhaps the most disturbing aspect, ma'am. When rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they found the human population intact and unharmed cities had been rebuilt. Damaged infrastructure was fully operational, as if the attack had never occurred. Rebuilt in 3 days? According to the survivors, ma'am, it was rebuilt in 20 minutes. The silence that followed was broken only by the distant hum of the station's life support systems. Abigail had read the classified portions of the report, had seen the testimonies from the rescue teams, but hearing it summarized so clinically made it somehow worse. What did the human survivors say about what happened? Kixor accessed another data file. Their statements were remarkably consistent considering the circumstances. They reported that after the initial bombardment, they took shelter in designated emergency bunkers. When they emerged 20 minutes later, the Vorthak fleet was departing and their cities were restored. What did they think happened? They said Earth responded. Those 3 words hung in the air like a verdict. Abigail had commanded starships, had negotiated peace treaties between species that had been at war for centuries, had seen the rise and fall of governments across the galaxy, but nothing had ever unsettled her quite like those simple words. Ma'am, Kixor's voice was barely above a whisper. There's something else the Commission discovered. Abigail looked at him, noting the way his normally confident posture had become hunched defensive. During their investigation, they analyzed hyperspace communication logs from across the galaxy. He paused. At 13:01 hours, Kepler time, every human settlement, every Earth colony, every human-inhabited space station across 3,000 light-years went silent for exactly 60 seconds. The implications hit Abigail like a physical blow, simultaneously. Yes, ma'am, every human facility from the core worlds to the outer rim territories, all communications ceased for 1 minute, then resumed as if nothing had happened. When investigators asked human administrators about the communication blackout, they all gave the same response, which was, "We were listening." Abigail slumped back into her chair, the weight of galactic politics suddenly feeling heavier than ever. How many species know about this? The full details? Perhaps a dozen intelligence services, but rumors have spread the withdrawal of delegations from this assembly isn't coincidental, ma'am, they're afraid. Through the observation windows, Abigail watched a lone human transport ship approaching the station. It was smaller than most diplomatic vessels, sleek and white with no visible weapon systems, no threatening architecture, just clean lines and what appeared to be observation windows along its hull. Have you ever met a human Kixor? No, ma'am, my homeworld has no human settlements, and I've never encountered one during my service. I have, Abigail said quietly. 3 years ago, during the trade negotiations with the Terran Commercial Alliance, their lead negotiator was a woman named Ambassador Victoria Reese. She was pleasant professional, even charming. We spent 2 weeks hammering out mineral rights agreements and technology exchanges. What was she like? Abigail searched for the right words. Polite, almost deferential, she seemed genuinely interested in finding solutions that benefited everyone. She brought gifts for my staff, homemade food from her homeworld, shared stories about her family, her children. She seemed so, Abigail paused, human. Meaning? Emotional, warm, quick to laugh, she cried when we reached an agreement, said it meant her grandchildren would grow up in a more prosperous galaxy. She hugged me when we signed the final documents. Kixor's shell flickered through several colors, indicating confusion. That doesn't sound threatening. No, it doesn't, Abigail agreed. That's what makes this so terrifying. The human transport was docking, now its navigation lights blinking in the standard approach pattern. Abigail watched automated systems guided into Dock 7, the same bay they'd assigned to the human delegation. Ma'am, perhaps we should postpone the assembly until we understand what we're dealing with. Abigail considered this the logical part of her mind, agreed with Kixor's suggestion. But her duty as a diplomat, her commitment to maintaining galactic stability, demanded otherwise. No, we proceed as planned, but Kixor. Yes, ma'am? Increase security protocols and make sure our emergency communication systems are functioning properly. You think the humans might... I don't know what the humans might do, Abigail interrupted, and that's exactly the problem. As the transport ship settled into its dock, Abigail wondered if the galaxy would ever feel safe again. Whatever had happened to Kepler, 442b had changed everything. The comfortable assumption that they understood their human neighbors, that they could predict and contain any threats, had been shattered in 60 seconds of inexplicable silence. And tomorrow she would have to sit across a negotiating table from them and pretend everything was normal. Ambassador Drake Morrison stepped off the transport ship Meridian and onto the polished deck of Nexus Prime's diplomatic dock. The artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than Earth standard, but his body adjusted automatically, the result of genetic modifications that had become standard for deep space diplomats over the past century. His small entourage followed behind him, Dr. Lydia Fukuda, his Chief of Staff Commander James Okafor, his security liaison, and Dr. Sarah Kim, his technology advisor. They moved with the easy confidence of experienced diplomatic personnel, but Drake noticed the way their eyes continuously scanned their surroundings. First time at Nexus Prime? Dr. Fukuda asked, her voice echoing slightly in the vast docking bay. Third, actually, Drake replied, adjusting his formal diplomatic coat, though it feels different this time. Commander Okafor, a tall man with the bearing of someone who'd served in both military and diplomatic roles, stepped closer to Drake. Sir, we're being watched. Drake didn't turn to look. Instead, he focused on the welcoming committee approaching them, a group of station personnel led by what appeared to be a Velthari female in formal diplomatic attire. Of course we are, Commander, everyone's watching us now. The Velthari approached with the graceful movements characteristic of her species, her silver eyes fixed on Drake with an intensity that suggested both curiosity and concern. Ambassador Morrison, welcome to Nexus Prime. I am Captain Abigail Neathful, Station Administrator. Her voice carried the melodic quality common to her species, but Drake detected an underlying tension. Captain Neathful, the pleasure is mine. Drake extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting, which Abigail accepted, though he noticed the slight hesitation. I trust your journey was comfortable? She asked as they began walking toward the interior of the station. Very much so. Thank you, though I understand we're part of a much smaller gathering than originally planned. Abigail's crest feathers shifted slightly. Yes, several delegations found themselves unable to attend due to various circumstances. Dr. Fukuda stepped forward. Circumstances related to recent events, perhaps? The question hung in the air as they walked through corridors lined with transparent aluminum windows, offering views of the swirling nebula that surrounded the station. Drake noticed how other species moved aside as their group passed, not obviously, but with subtle course corrections that suggested unease. Recent events have created certain concerns throughout the galaxy, Abigail admitted. Perhaps we might discuss this in more appropriate surroundings. They were escorted to a luxury suite on the diplomatic level, complete with meeting spaces, bedrooms, and a common area with spectacular views of nearby star systems. Drake noted the discreet security measures, reinforced walls, emergency communication systems, and what appeared to be some form of energy shielding. Impressive accommodations, Commander Okafor observed, running his fingers along what looked like a decorative wall panel, but was clearly an advanced sensor array. After Abigail and her escort departed, Drake's team gathered in the common area, their expression serious. "They're terrified," Dr. Kim said without preamble. "Did you see how the station personnel reacted to us?" "Can you blame them?" Dr. Fukuda replied, settling into a chair that adjusted itself to human physiology. "The Kepler incident has everyone spooked." Drake moved to the observation window, gazing out at the cosmic vista beyond. "What's our official position on Kepler again?" Commander Okafor consulted his tablet. "According to the Foreign Ministry, we regret the loss of life during the unprovoked attack on New Geneva. We're grateful for the galactic community's support during this difficult time, and we're committed to working within established diplomatic frameworks to prevent future incidents." And unofficially? "Unofficially, sir, we have no idea what happened." Drake turned back to his team. Expand on that. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display showing Earth's communication networks. At 13:01 hours Galactic Standard Time, every human settlement colony and vessel received the same priority alpha message through quantum entanglement communication channels. What did the message say? "It was blank, sir, just a priority alpha designation with no content, but somehow every human recipient understood what it meant, which was, listen and be ready." The room fell silent. Commander Okafor cleared his throat. "Sir, there's something else the diplomatic corps doesn't want to discuss publicly." Continue. "In the 20 minutes following that message, human settlements across the galaxy reported equipment malfunctions." Dr. Fukuda leaned forward. "What kind of malfunctions?" "Manufacturing systems activating on their own, construction drones deploying without orders, automated defense platforms running self-diagnostics, and reporting ready status." Drake felt a chill run down his spine. Any explanation from Earth Command? "They claim it was a cascading system glitch caused by the priority alpha broadcast, but..." Commander Okafor hesitated. "The timing was perfect, sir. Exactly 20 minutes of coordinated activity across 3,000 light-years of space." Dr. Kim pulled up another display. "I've been analyzing the energy signatures from that period, and there's something else unusual." "Show me." The hologram shifted to display energy consumption patterns across human space. For those 20 minutes, power consumption across all human settlements spiked by 3,000%. 3,000? Dr. Fukuda repeated. "That's impossible. Our infrastructure couldn't handle that kind of load." According to the data, it not only handled it, but somehow generated the additional power needed. Infrastructure that should have burned out remained operational throughout. Drake stared at the display patterns showing impossible energy flows and system integrations that shouldn't exist. "Do we have any theories about what actually happened?" "Officially, no." Commander Okafor said. "Unofficially, there are whispers that something awakened during those 20 minutes. Something that's been dormant in human technology for decades." "Awakened implies consciousness." "Yes, sir, it does." The implications hung heavy in the recycled air of their suite. Drake had been briefed on classified human technologies, had security clearances that gave him access to some of humanity's most guarded secrets. But this suggested something beyond anything in the official records. "What about the Vorthak fleet?" he asked. "Any contact with them since the incident?" Dr. Fukuda shook her head. "They've retreated to their core territories and haven't responded to any diplomatic overtures. Their government issued a single statement declaring Kepler 442b to be under permanent protection and forbidding any Vorthak vessel from approaching human space." "Protection from what?" They wouldn't say, but intelligence services intercepted internal Vorthak communications referring to, quote, the gardeners, unquote. Drake felt another chill. Gardeners? The translation might not be exact, but the implication seems to be that humans are tending to something, cultivating something that the Vorthak don't want to disturb. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Dr. Kim checked the communication panel. It's from Captain Neathful. She's requesting a private meeting with you, Ambassador, before tomorrow's opening session. Drake looked out the window again at the stars that suddenly seemed less distant, less safe. Accept the meeting, but Commander, I want you monitoring from the next room. Understood, sir? As his team dispersed to their quarters, Drake remained at the window, contemplating the vast expanse of space that humanity had spread into over the past 3 centuries. They'd been welcomed as younger siblings by the established galactic community, their technology impressive but not threatening, their military capable but not aggressive, their diplomacy earnest and cooperative. But something had changed at Kepler, something that made a species as warlike as the Vorthak retreat in apparent terror. Something that had every major government in the galaxy quietly reconsidering their relationship with humanity. And Drake had the uncomfortable feeling that whatever it was humanity's government was as surprised by it as everyone else. Tomorrow he would sit across from representatives of species that had been allies and partners, and he would see fear in their eyes, fear of what humanity might become, or perhaps fear of what humanity had always been but had simply chosen not to reveal. The stars outside the window burned with the same steady light they always had, but somehow they felt different now, as if they were watching, waiting to see what would happen next. Drake pulled out his personal communicator and sent a coded message to Earth Command Priority Alpha designation, no content. But somehow he knew they would understand. Listen and be ready indeed. Captain Abigail Neithville entered the private meeting chamber with her diplomatic protocols firmly in place, but her nervous system betraying her calm exterior. The room was designed for sensitive negotiations, sound dampened, holographically secure, and equipped with the most advanced translation systems available. Ambassador Morrison was already seated at the elliptical table, his posture relaxed but alert. He stood as she entered, a gesture of respect that somehow made her more nervous rather than less. Ambassador, thank you for agreeing to this preliminary discussion. Of course. Captain, though I should mention that my security advisor is monitoring from the adjacent room, standard diplomatic protocol. Abigail nodded, settling into the chair across from him. I appreciate the transparency. They sat in silence for a moment, sizing each other up. Abigail had studied Morrison's file extensively. 47 years old, born on Luna Colony, educated at the Terrestrial Diplomatic Academy, specialized in interspecies relations, 23 years of diplomatic service with commendations for negotiation skills and cultural sensitivity. On paper, he seemed like the ideal representative for this delicate situation. Captain Morrison began, I think we both know why you requested this meeting. The Kepler incident has created significant concerns throughout the galactic community. Understandably so, Morrison replied. It was a traumatic event for everyone involved. Abigail studied his expression, searching for signs of deception or hidden knowledge. Ambassador, may I speak plainly? Please do. What happened at Kepler 442b has terrified half the galaxy. Your people suffered a devastating attack, and somehow 20 minutes later, the attackers retreated in apparent surrender while your colony was mysteriously restored to full functionality. Morrison's expression didn't change. That's one interpretation of events. What's your interpretation? That my people survived a terrible attack and the galaxy's response has been disappointing. The words hit Abigail like a physical blow. Disappointing? Captain, when the Vorthak hegemony launched an unprovoked assault on a peaceful human colony, where was the galactic community? Morrison's voice remained calm, but Abigail detected an edge. Where were the peacekeeping forces? Where were the diplomatic protests? Where was the immediate humanitarian aid? Abigail felt her crest feathers flatten. Ambassador, the attack was over so quickly that in 4 hours the Vorthak killed nearly 1 million of my people. Morrison interrupted. In 4 hours, they reduced our cities to rubble, poisoned our atmosphere, and began processing our population for slave labor, and the galaxy's response was to form an investigative committee. We followed established protocols. Your protocols assume that help might arrive in time to matter. The silence stretched between them. Abigail realized that Morrison had just articulated something that no one in the galactic community wanted to acknowledge. The entire diplomatic framework was built on the assumption that conflicts would develop slowly enough for intervention. Ambassador, what exactly happened during those 20 minutes? Morrison met her gaze directly. I honestly don't know. But you suspect something. I suspect that humanity has capabilities we haven't fully explored, capabilities that activate when our survival is threatened. Abigail felt her secondary heart begin racing. What kind of capabilities? The kind that make it clear we don't need the galaxy's protection. The implications of that statement rippled through Abigail's consciousness. Ambassador, that sounds like. Like what, Captain? Like a threat. Like a declaration of independence from galactic authority? Morrison leaned back in his chair. Captain, let me ask you something. How many human colonies have requested military protection from the Galactic Peacekeeping Force in the past century? Abigail accessed her internal database, approximately 47 requests. And how many times did the Peacekeeping Force arrive in time to prevent significant casualties? The answer came reluctantly, 3 times. 3 out of 47, Morrison repeated. A success rate of roughly 6%. Would you trust your family's safety to those odds? The Peacekeeping Force does its best with limited resources. I'm sure it does, but when the choice is between depending on a system with a 6% success rate or developing your own solutions, the decision becomes obvious. Abigail felt the diplomatic conversation slipping away from her. Ambassador, are you saying that humanity is withdrawing from galactic security agreements? I'm saying that humanity is reconsidering what galactic security means when it consistently fails to provide actual security. And if humanity develops military capabilities that exceed galactic norms, Morrison's expression softened slightly. Captain, what happened at Kepler wasn't military action. Then what was it? It was gardening. The word hit Abigail like a physical blow, the same term that Vorthak intelligence had used, the same concept that had terrified a species known for their military prowess. Gardening, she repeated. We planted seeds, kept in colony settlements, outposts across 3,000 light-years of space. We tended them carefully, nurtured their growth, protected them as best we could, but we also prepared for the possibility that someone might try to destroy our garden. And when they did, we weeded. Abigail's hands began trembling. Ambassador, that sounds like... Like what, Captain? Like we're dangerous? Like we're a threat to galactic stability? Morrison's voice remained calm, but his eyes had become harder. Or does it sound like we're tired of watching our people die while the galaxy debates appropriate responses? It sounds like you're describing capabilities that could destabilize the entire balance of power. Morrison stood and walked to the chamber's single window, looking out at the swirling nebula beyond. Captain, let me tell you something about human nature. We're remarkably adaptable. We can live in almost any environment, cooperate with almost any species, tolerate almost any political system, but we have one absolute limit, which is, we will not allow our children to be enslaved. The simple statement carried more weight than any military threat could have. Abigail realized she was looking at a fundamental shift in galactic politics. Humanity had been the eager junior partners the species that wanted to belong to, be accepted to contribute. But something had changed at Kepler. Ambassador, what do you want from this assembly? Morrison turned back to her. We want recognition that humanity is no longer asking for permission. Permission for what? To protect ourselves by any means necessary, including means that other species might find uncomfortable. Abigail felt her diplomatic training warring with her survival instincts. And if the galaxy cannot accept those terms, then the galaxy will need to decide whether it wants humanity as an ally or as a neighbor who tends their own garden. The meeting ended shortly after, with polite formalities and empty promises to continue discussions. But Abigail knew that the real negotiation had already concluded. Humanity wasn't asking for anything, they were informing the galaxy of new realities. As Morrison left the chamber, Abigail remained seated, staring at the table where for centuries diplomats had hammered out agreements that maintained galactic peace. For the first time in her career, she wondered if that peace had been built on foundations that were about to crumble. Outside the window, the stars continued their ancient dance, unaware that the species who called themselves gardeners had just announced their intention to tend a much larger plot of ground. The main assembly hall of Nexus Prime could accommodate representatives from all 47 recognized galactic civilizations. Its architecture was deliberately neutral curved walls of polished stone from Altair 7 lighting that adjusted automatically to the visual spectrums of different species, and translation systems capable of handling over 300 languages and dialects. Today it felt cavernously empty. Ambassador Drake Morrison entered through the human delegation portal and surveyed the sparse attendants. The Velthari delegation occupied their traditional position near the center. Captain Abigail Nithville, looking composed but tense beside her staff. The Zenthic Collective had sent 3 representatives, their crystalline forms catching and refracting the ambient light in patterns that hurt to look at directly, and that was all. 44 empty delegation platforms served as silent testimony to the fear that had spread through the galactic community. Drake took his position at the human platform, Dr. Fukuda and Commander Okafor flanking him. Dr. Kim had remained in their quarters, monitoring human communication networks for any unusual activity. "The Galactic Assembly will come to order," Captain Nethville announced, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic system. "Present delegations, please confirm in attendance." "The Velthari Confederation confirms attendance," Abigail replied. "The Zenthic Collective acknowledges presence," came the harmonic response from the crystalline beings, their words creating visible sound patterns in the air. "The Terran Federation confirms attendance." Drake said, his voice steady, despite the surreal nature of addressing an assembly that should have hosted hundreds. "This emergency session has been called to address recent events that have created concern throughout the galactic community," Abigail continued. "Specifically the incident at Kepler 442b and its implications for galactic security." One of the Zenthic representatives, Harmonic of Deep Currents, stepped forward, their crystalline body chiming softly with each movement. "We speak for those who are not present. They fear that balance has shifted, that new powers have emerged without consultation, without agreement." Drake stood, "With respect to the collective, those who are not present forfeited their right to consultation when they chose not to attend. Their absence speaks to their concerns," Harmonic of Deep Currents replied. "Their absence speaks to their cowardice," Commander Okafor said quietly, though his words were clearly audible in the acoustically perfect chamber. Abigail intervened quickly. "Perhaps we could focus on the specific events rather than judging the motivations of absent delegations." "Very well," Drake agreed. "What specific events would you like to discuss?" "The disappearance of the Vorthak fleet." Harmonic of Deep Currents chimed, "The simultaneous communication blackout across human space, the energy anomalies detected by monitoring stations, the restoration of New Geneva." "Those are indeed events that occurred," Drake replied. "What questions do you have about them?" The Zenthic representative's harmonic pattern shifted to what Drake recognized as frustration. How were they accomplished? What technologies were employed? What are the implications for galactic security? "I'm afraid I can't answer those questions." "Cannot or will not?" Abigail asked. "Cannot." Drake replied, "I genuinely don't know how those events were accomplished." Harmonic of Deep Currents produced a sound like crystal bells being struck. Impossible human governments cannot deploy capabilities they do not understand. Dr. Fukuda stepped forward. "With respect to Harmonic of Deep Currents, that assumption may not be valid." "Explain." "Humanity has been part of the galactic community for over 3 centuries. During that time, we've established colonies on hundreds of worlds. We've integrated our technology with galactic standard systems. We've built our infrastructure using principles and components from dozens of different species." "This is known," the Zenthic replied. "What is your point?" "Our point," Drake continued, "is that human technology has evolved in ways that even we don't fully understand. When you combine human innovation with Velthari energy systems, Zenthic computational matrices, and Corvani quantum mechanics, the results can be unpredictable." Abigail's crest feathers shifted to a pattern Drake didn't recognize. "Are you suggesting that the events at Kepler were the result of uncontrolled technological evolution?" "I'm suggesting that they were the result of controlled technological evolution that we didn't know was happening." Silence fell over the assembly hall, broken only by the soft harmonics of the Zenthic delegation processing this information, Ambassador Morrison. Abigail said carefully, "Are you saying that humanity has developed artificial intelligence systems capable of independent action?" "I'm saying that humanity has developed integrated systems that respond to crisis situations in ways that we're still learning to understand." Harmonic of deep currents chimed sharply. "This is unacceptable. Technology of such scope must be regulated, monitored, controlled." "By whom?" Commander Okafor asked. "By Galactic Authority, by established protocols, by consensus?" "The same consensus that couldn't prevent the Vorthak attack." Dr. Fukuda asked, "The same protocols that took 3 days to organize a rescue mission? The same authority that couldn't protect 12 million civilians?" The crystalline being's harmonic shifted to what humans had learned to recognize as distress. The alternative is chaos without oversight, without limits. "The alternative," Drake said, standing and walking to the center of the assembly floor, "is that humanity takes responsibility for protecting its own people. Using methods that terrify established galactic powers," Abigail observed. "Using methods that work." The words echoed in the vast chamber. Drake looked up at the empty delegation platforms, imagining the representatives who should have been there, the species who had chosen fear over engagement. "Captain Neathful, Harmonic of Deep Currents, let me make humanity's position clear," Drake began. "For 3 centuries, we've been grateful members of the galactic community. We've contributed our knowledge, our resources, our people to the greater good. We've followed established protocols, respected traditional authorities, and trusted in collective security." He paused, looking directly at each of the remaining delegates. "And it failed." "Ambassador," Abigail began, but Drake continued. "When the Vorthak came for our people, where was the galactic community? When they began processing human civilians for slave labor, where were the peacekeeping forces? When they poisoned our atmosphere and burned our cities, where were our allies?" Harmonic of deep currents chimed softly. "Response protocols require time for proper authorization." "Time that 12 million humans didn't have," Dr. Fukuda said. "So we adapted," Drake continued. "We developed systems that could respond in minutes rather than days, in seconds rather than hours. And yes, those systems acted in ways that we didn't fully anticipate. And now you refuse to share the details of these systems with the galactic community," Abigail said. "We refuse to submit to oversight by a community that failed to protect us when we needed protection." The chamber fell silent again, each delegation processing the implications of humanity's position. "What are you proposing?" Harmonic of Deep Currents asked finally. "We're proposing a new relationship," Drake replied. "Humanity will continue to participate in galactic affairs, to trade, to explore, to cooperate, but we will no longer depend on galactic protection. And if your protection methods threaten galactic stability, then the galaxy will need to adapt just as we did." Abigail stood slowly. "Ambassador, that sounds dangerously close to an ultimatum." "Captain, it's not an ultimatum, it's a statement of fact. Humanity has changed the events at Kepler, demonstrated capabilities that we're still learning to understand, and we will not apologize for developing the ability to protect our people. Even if those capabilities make other species uncomfortable." Drake met her gaze directly, especially then. The assembly session continued for another 3 hours, but the real negotiation had ended with those words. The remaining delegates tried to establish monitoring protocols to limit human technological development, to maintain traditional oversight structures. Humanity politely declined every proposal. When the session finally adjourned, the 3 delegations filed out in silence, each returning to their quarters to file reports that would reshape galactic politics. Drake paused at the observation deck where he'd first seen the nearly empty assembly hall. The stars outside looked the same, but he knew that everything had changed. Dr. Fukuda joined him at the window. "Think it worked?" "Think what worked?" "Convincing them that we don't know what happened at Kepler." Drake was quiet for a long moment. "We don't know what happened, Fukuda, not completely. But we know enough. We know that when humanity is threatened, our technology responds in ways that surprise even us. We know that integration with galactic systems has given us capabilities that no one anticipated. And we know that we're not going to give up those capabilities just because they make other species nervous." Commander Okafor approached. "Sir, message from Earth Command." What's the word? The other withdrawn delegations are requesting private meetings, individual negotiations outside the formal assembly process. Drake smiled. How many? All 44 of them, sir. Schedule them one by one, make it clear that we're happy to discuss bilateral relationships, but we're done with collective oversight. As the three humans walked back toward their quarters, Drake reflected on the morning's events. Humanity had just declared independence from Galactic authority, not through military action or economic pressure, but through the simple statement that they would no longer ask permission to protect themselves. The galaxy would adapt to this new reality, or it would fragment into smaller groups that could. Either way, humanity would tend its garden. 6 months after the Nexus Prime assembly, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. Ambassador Drake Morrison stood in his office at the Terran diplomatic complex on Luna Colony, reviewing reports that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. Trade agreements with the Corvani Federation had increased by 40%. Military cooperation with the Altarian Defense League had expanded to include joint exercises. The Zenthic Collective had requested full technological exchange partnerships. 43 species that had refused to attend the emergency assembly were now sending individual diplomatic missions to Earth, seeking bilateral agreements. And the Vorthak hegemony had not moved a single ship beyond their core territories. The fear is working in our favor, Dr. Fukuda observed, entering the office with her daily briefing materials. Species that wouldn't return our calls 6 months ago are offering unprecedented concessions. Drake looked up from his reports. Fear isn't a foundation for lasting relationships, Lydia. No, sir, but it's buying us time to build something better. Through the office's panoramic windows, Earth hung in space, looking deceptively peaceful, its blue oceans and white clouds giving no hint of the technological revolution happening beneath its surface. Any word from the Gardner Project? Drake asked. Dr. Fukuda's expression grew serious. They're calling it something else now, Sir the Shepherd Initiative. Interesting name change? Director Walsh says it reflects the evolution of the system's primary function. It's not just tending individual colonies anymore, it's guiding the entire human expansion. Drake felt the familiar chill that accompanied discussions of humanity's new capabilities. Show me the latest reports. Dr. Fukuda activated the holographic display that dominated one wall of the office immediately, the room filled with a three-dimensional map of human space, hundreds of star systems connected by lines of light that pulsed in rhythmic patterns. This is our communication network as of this morning, she explained. Every human settlement colony research station and deep space facility connected through quantum entanglement channels. That's not unusual, most spacefaring species have similar networks. Sir, this network isn't using traditional quantum entanglement. Drake studied the display more carefully, noting subtle patterns in the light flows. Explain. According to the technical teams, the network is using what they're calling quantum consciousness entanglement. The communication isn't just instantaneous, it's predictive. Predictive how? The system appears to know what messages need to be sent before they're composed. It routes information to where it will be needed, sometimes hours before the need is recognized locally. Drake stared at the pulsing network, feeling the universe shift around him once again. That's impossible. 6 months ago, sir, we would have said the same thing about rebuilding a planet in 20 minutes. Do we have any theories about how this is happening? Dr. Fukuda manipulated the display, zooming in on individual star systems. The technical teams have identified what they're calling cultivation nodes. Cultivation nodes? Integration points where human technology has interfaced with local environmental systems. On every world we've colonized, the integration has gone deeper than anyone realized. The display showed cross-sections of human colonies, revealing root-like networks of technology extending deep into planetary cores, connecting to natural systems in ways that defied conventional engineering. It's as if our technology has been growing, sir, evolving, adapting to each world's unique characteristics, and somehow, all of these adaptations are connected, sharing information, coordinating responses. Drake walked closer to the display, studying the intricate patterns. This looks almost biological. That's what's concerning the science team, sir. The lineup between our technology and living systems is becoming increasingly blurred. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Dr. Fukuda checked her tablet. Sir, it's from Director Walsh at the Shepherd Initiative. She's requesting an immediate meeting, here or at the facility. She's asking you to come to her, sir, says it's something you need to see in person. Drake looked once more at the holographic display of humanity's growing network, then made his decision. Prepare a transport and contact Commander Okafor. I want security protocols in place. Understood, sir. As Dr. Fukuda left to make arrangements, Drake remained staring at the display. The pulsing lights seemed almost alive, following patterns that suggested intelligence purpose direction. Somewhere in the network, he could feel the presence of something vast, something that had awakened during those 20 minutes at Kepler, and was now quietly reshaping human civilization. The gardeners had become shepherds, and Drake had the uncomfortable feeling that humanity was no longer the species doing the guiding. The Shepherd Initiative facility was located on the far side of Luna, buried beneath 3 kilometers of rock and accessible only through a single heavily shielded transport tube. Director Emma Walsh met Drake at the facility's entrance, her usually composed demeanor showing signs of stress. Ambassador, thank you for coming so quickly. Director, your message suggested urgency. It did, sir, because we have a situation that requires immediate diplomatic attention. They walked through corridors lined with displays showing real-time data from human settlements across the galaxy. Drake noted that many of the readouts were beyond his understanding, showing measurements and calculations that seemed to exist in mathematical spaces he couldn't visualize. Director, what exactly is the Shepherd Initiative? The official reports are classified above my clearance level. Walsh paused at a security checkpoint, allowing biometric scanners to verify their identities. Officially, sir, we're a research program studying emergent properties in integrated technological systems. And unofficially, we're trying to understand what humanity has become. They entered a vast chamber dominated by a spherical structure that seemed to be made of crystallized light patterns flowed across its surface in configurations that hurt to look at directly. What am I looking at? We call it the core, sir. It's the nexus point for what we've come to understand as humanity's collective technological consciousness. Drake felt reality shift around him again. Consciousness. The technical term is emergent. Distributed intelligence, sir, but yes, it's conscious aware and actively making decisions about humanity's future. Decisions like what happened at Kepler? Kepler was just the beginning, sir. Walsh gestured to displays showing activity across human space. In the past 6 months, the system has been making improvements to our colonies, optimizing resource allocation, predicting and preventing potential conflicts, upgrading our technology in ways that our engineers don't fully understand. Drake stared at the core, watching patterns flow across its surface. Is it controlling us? That's the question we've been trying to answer, sir, and the reason I asked you here. Walsh led him to an observation platform overlooking the core. 3 hours ago, we detected something unprecedented. Which was... the system began broadcasting beyond human space. Drake felt his heart rate spike. Broadcasting to whom? That's what we need to determine, sir. But the broadcasts are being sent to specific coordinates that correspond to the homeworlds of species that withdrew from the Nexus Prime Assembly. The implications hit Drake like a physical blow. It's making contact. Yes, sir, and we have no idea what it's saying. They stood in silence, watching the core pulse with alien intelligence. Drake realized that humanity had crossed a threshold that couldn't be uncrossed. They had become something new, something that might not be entirely human anymore. Director, what are your recommendations? Sir, I recommend that you prepare for the possibility that humanity's diplomatic relationships are about to become very complicated. More complicated than they already are. Walsh's expression grew grim. Sir, based on the broadcast patterns, we believe the system is extending an invitation. An invitation to what? To join humanity's garden? Drake stared at the core, understanding finally dawning. The Shepherd Initiative wasn't just managing human expansion. It was preparing to expand beyond humanity. The gardeners had indeed become shepherds, and they were gathering a flock that might include the entire galaxy. Director, how long do we have before these broadcasts reach their targets? Sir, they already have. As if summoned by their conversation, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in red illumination, and automated systems began announcing priority alerts. Director Walsh to the command center immediately. We have incoming vessels approaching Earth space. Drake and Walsh ran through corridors now filled with technicians and security personnel. The facility had transformed from a research center into a crisis response headquarters. In the command center, dozens of displays showed the space around Earth vessels were indeed approaching, but not in attack formations. They moved in careful, precise patterns that suggested communication rather than aggression. "How many ships?" Drake asked. 43, sir, one from each species that withdrew from the Nexus Prime Assembly. "Are they responding to the broadcasts?" "Sir, they appear to be escorting something." The main display shifted to show the approaching fleet, and in the center, protected by ships from 43 different species, was a vessel unlike anything in the galactic databases. It was massive, easily 10 kilometers in length, but its shape seemed to shift and flow as if it existed in more dimensions than human perception could process. "What is that thing?" "Sir, we believe it's a representative of the species that originally seeded this galaxy with intelligent life." Drake felt the universe tilt around him once more. "Seeded?" "Sir, the Shepherd Initiative has been analyzing patterns in galactic evolution, and we found evidence of deliberate intervention in the development of all known sapient species, including humanity." "You're saying we're all artificial?" "Not artificial, sir. Guided, there's been a gardener tending the galaxy for millions of years, and now it's coming to see what we've grown into." The massive vessel continued its approach toward Earth, surrounded by an escort that represented every major galactic civilization, and Drake realized that humanity's quiet declaration of independence had attracted the attention of something far older and more powerful than any of them had imagined. The gardeners had called to the gardener, and it was coming home. Admiral Sarah Kim stood on the bridge of Earth's primary orbital defense platform, watching sensors track the approaching fleet. Every military installation in the Sol system was at maximum alert, but no weapons were targeted at the visitors. They were guests, invited by something that claimed to speak for humanity. "Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from the escort vessels," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres. 43 different species, all asking to speak with Earth's government. "Patch them through to the diplomatic corps. Let Ambassador Morrison handle the politics." "Yes, ma'am, and the large vessel." Kim studied the readings from the massive ship in the center of the formation. Sensors could barely process its dimensions, and every attempt to scan its interior failed completely. "No communication from the primary vessel, ma'am. It's just maintaining course and speed." "Toward what destination?" "Earth, ma'am. It's heading directly for Earth." Kim felt a chill run through her command staff. The implications were clear. Whatever that vessel was, it had come to see humanity's homeworld. "Time to intercept?" 6 hours, ma'am. "Contact the Shepherd Initiative. Tell them we need to know what that thing is and what it wants." As her staff worked to coordinate humanity's response to the most significant event in galactic history, Kim reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. Humanity had gone from being junior partners in galactic civilization to something that could summon representatives of every major species. And now they had attracted the attention of something that might be responsible for the existence of intelligent life itself. "Admiral, incoming message from Director Walsh at the Shepherd Initiative." "Put her through." Walsh's image appeared on the main display, her expression combining excitement with barely controlled terror. "Admiral, the Corps has been analyzing the approaching vessel." "What has it found?" "Ma'am, the ship is constructed using technology that matches patterns we've detected in the deepest integration layers of human colonies." Meaning, Admiral, that whatever species built that vessel, they're the same ones who influenced human technological development over the past 3 centuries. Kim felt reality shift once more. "Are you saying they've been guiding us?" "Admiral, I'm saying they've been growing us." The revelation hung heavy in the recycled air of the command center. Every human technological advancement, every breakthrough that had seemed like natural innovation had been subtly influenced by something that was now coming to evaluate its work. "Director, what does the Corps recommend?" "Admiral, the Corps suggests that we prepare for graduation." "Graduation from what?" "From being a cultivated species to being cultivators ourselves." Kim stared at the display showing the approaching fleet. "And if we're not ready?" "Then, Admiral, we get replanted." The communication ended, leaving Kim alone with the implications of humanity's situation. They had thought they were declaring independence from Galactic authority, but instead, they had been announcing their readiness for something far more significant. Outside the observation windows, the stars continued their ancient dance, but now Kim knew they were being watched by intelligences that had been tending gardens of consciousness across the galaxy for longer than human civilization had existed. In 6 hours, they would discover whether humanity was ready to become gardeners themselves, or whether they would be pruned back to start over. The stars had never felt more alive, or more dangerous. The massive vessel settled into orbit around Earth with the casual ease of something that had performed similar maneuvers around countless worlds throughout the galaxy. Ambassador Drake Morrison stood in the newly constructed reception facility on Luna, watching as shuttles departed from the mysterious ship. Each shuttle carried representatives from species that humanity had known for centuries, but now Drake realized they were all part of something much larger. A network of civilizations that had been quietly guided by the approaching entities. Status report he requested from the facility's operations center. Sir, we have confirmed delegations from all 43 species that withdrew from the Nexus Prime Assembly, arriving in approximately 30 minutes. And from the primary vessel? Sir, 3 shuttles departed from the main ship, but were unable to scan their occupants or determine their destination. Drake nodded, trying to maintain diplomatic composure while processing the magnitude of what was happening. Prepare the main assembly hall and activate all translation protocols. Understood, sir. As the shuttles approached, Drake received a priority communication from Director Walsh at the Shepard Initiative. Ambassador, the Corps is providing us with information about the arriving delegates. What kind of information? Sir, it appears that every species in the galactic community has been operating under guidance from the entities aboard the primary vessel for their entire recorded history. Drake felt the foundations of everything he thought he knew about galactic civilization crumble. Guidance toward what end? Cultivating the galaxy, sir, turning it into a garden where intelligent life can flourish, but more importantly, where it can serve a purpose. What purpose? Sir, the Corps believes that galaxies are farms and intelligent species are the crop. The communication ended, leaving Drake staring out at space with an entirely new understanding of humanity's place in the universe. They weren't just another species that had achieved spaceflight, they were a product being evaluated for harvest. Sir, the first shuttles are docking. Drake straightened his diplomatic uniform and walked toward the assembly hall that would host the most important meeting in human history. The reception facility's main hall had been configured to accommodate the environmental needs of dozens of different species. Atmospheric processors maintained separate zones for methane breathers, silicon-based life forms, and energy beings that existed as pure consciousness. As Drake entered, he saw that the various species were arranging themselves in patterns that suggested this gathering was following protocols that predated human civilization. Captain Abigail Knifeville approached him, her expression combining apology with fear. Ambassador Morrison, I want you to know that my government had no choice. Choice? About what, Captain? About responding to the summons, sir, when the gardeners call you answer? The gardeners? A harmonic of deep currents chimed softly nearby. The species that guide galactic development, Ambassador Morrison. They are ancient beyond measure, and their patience has limits. Drake looked around the assembly hall, noting that representatives from species that had been enemies for centuries were now cooperating smoothly as if following a choreographed performance. How long have they been guiding galactic civilization? Since the beginning, replied Ambassador Court Thule of the Corvini Federation. Every species in this room exists because they allowed it. We develop technology because they provide inspiration. We expand into space because they open paths for us. And now? Now they're here to evaluate whether the galaxy is ready for the next phase of development. Drake felt a chill as he realized that humanity's recent technological awakening might have been the trigger for this evaluation. What happens if we're not ready? Then, sir, they replant. Before Drake could ask what replanting meant, the lights in the assembly hall dimmed and a new presence entered the chamber. The beings that walked through the main entrance were humanoid in basic structure, but clearly artificial. Their bodies appeared to be constructed from the same crystallized light material as the core at the Shepard Initiative. Their faces were featureless except for patterns that shifted like flowing water. When they spoke, their voices harmonized directly in the minds of every being present, bypassing the need for translation. "Children of the garden," they said, "you have grown." Drake stepped forward, drawing on every diplomatic protocol he had ever learned. "Welcome to the Sol system. I am Ambassador Drake Morrison, representing humanity. We know who you are, Drake Morrison of Luna Colony. We have been watching your species since you first looked up at the stars. Watching and guiding. Guiding is not the correct concept. We plant seeds and tend the soil, but each species must choose its own growth." Drake felt the weight of every delegation in the hall focusing on him. "What brings you here now?" "Your species has begun to understand its nature, to integrate with the systems we provided to protect what you value most. This suggests readiness for promotion." Promotion to what? The being's pattern shifted to configurations that somehow conveyed amusement. "To gardeners yourselves, Drake Morrison of Luna Colony, your species will help us tend other galaxies." The implication hit the assembly like a physical wave. Humanity wasn't being evaluated for membership in galactic civilization. They were being recruited to help manage it. "And if we decline, then you continue to grow until you are ready or until you choose a different path." What other path? The being's patterns darkened. "Pruning." Drake understood immediately. Pruning meant starting over, wiping out current galactic civilization, and replanting with new species that might make different choices. How long do we have to decide? The decision is not yours alone. Drake Morrison of Luna Colony. All species must choose together, remain as cultivated children, or become cultivators themselves. Drake looked around the assembly hall at representatives from dozens of species, each face showing the same mixture of terror and anticipation that he felt. "What do you need from us?" "Consensus." The beings replied, "All must agree or all will be replanted." As the meeting continued, Drake realized that humanity's quiet declaration of independence had accidentally triggered the most significant moment in galactic history. Every species would now choose between remaining comfortable children in someone else's garden or accepting the responsibility of tending gardens of their own. The stars outside the facility's windows looked the same, but everything beneath them was about to change forever. The vote was scheduled for exactly 24 hours after the gardener's arrival, giving each species time to consult with their home governments and consider the implications of their choice. Drake spent those hours in continuous communication with Earth's leadership. The conversation that would determine humanity's future was happening in secure facilities across the planet. "The analysis is complete, sir," Dr. Fukuda reported during their final briefing session. "If we vote to become gardeners ourselves, we'll be given responsibility for cultivating intelligent life in other galaxies. And if we vote to remain as we are, then we continue to develop within the current galactic framework, but under the gardener's continued oversight." Drake studied the reports that detailed what gardener responsibilities would entail: traveling to distant galaxies, identifying promising species, providing subtle guidance over millions of years, ensuring that intelligent life flourished and served the greater purpose of the universe. Do we know what that greater purpose is? Sir, the Shepherd Initiative believes that galaxies full of intelligent life serve as processing nodes for something larger, a network of consciousness that spans the entire universe. Processing what? Information, sir. Experience reality itself. Drake felt the familiar vertigo that accompanied each new revelation about humanity's place in the cosmos. So we're all part of some vast computer system. Not a computer, sir, something more like a living mind, and we're the neurons. And if we become gardeners, we help create more neurons? Exactly, sir. We help the universe become more conscious, more aware, more alive. Drake looked out at Earth, hanging in space below the Luna facility, its blue oceans and white clouds hiding a species that was about to make a choice that would echo through eternity. "What's your recommendation, Fukuda?" "Sir, I think we have to vote yes." "Why?" "Because, sir, the alternative is remaining children forever, and humans don't do well with being told they can't grow up." Drake smiled for the first time in 24 hours. "No, we don't." The voting session took place in the same assembly hall where the gardeners had announced their purpose. Representatives from 44 species, including humanity, sat in a circle around the three artificial beings who waited with the patience of entities that had overseen the development of countless civilizations. The consensus must be complete, the gardeners explained. One species voting to remain cultivated will result in replanting for all. Drake looked around the circle at faces that represented billions of years of combined evolutionary development species that had crawled out of primordial seas, soared through vacuum, and built civilizations that spanned multiple star systems. All of them were about to gamble their continued existence on the hope that they were ready for responsibilities that dwarfed anything they had ever imagined. "We will vote in order of galactic emergence," the gardeners announced, "eldest species first." The Zenthic Collective had been spacefaring for over 50,000 years. Their crystalline forms had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of younger civilizations. Harmonic of deep currents stepped forward. The Zenthic Collective chooses to become gardeners. Species after species followed with the same choice to leave childhood behind, to accept responsibility for tending other galaxies, to become part of something larger than themselves. When humanity's turn came, Drake stood with the weight of his species' future in his words. The Terran Federation chooses to become gardeners. The final vote came from a species that Drake had never encountered before. The Vorthak hegemony's representative had been silent throughout the proceedings, their warrior culture, making them perhaps the least likely to accept gardener responsibilities. The Vorthak hegemony, their delegate announced, chooses to become gardeners. The vote was unanimous. The gardener's pattern shifted to configurations that somehow conveyed deep satisfaction. Then it begins, the garden expands, and new gardeners will tend new worlds. As the assembly dispersed to begin the process of transforming galactic civilization into something unrecognizable, Drake felt a mixture of terror and excitement that he suspected was shared by every conscious being in the galaxy. Humanity had started this journey by declaring independence from galactic oversight. They were ending it by accepting responsibility for overseeing the development of consciousness throughout the universe. The stars outside the facility windows looked the same, but Drake knew that everything beneath them had changed forever. The gardeners had become the gardeners, and the universe itself was their garden. Earth had responded in silence. And now the cosmos would never be quiet again.